Thank you very much for coming to a presentation right after lunch on Friday, the last day of the conference. Today we're going to be talking about motivating your Agile team with an open source mentality. So a lot of the inspiration for this presentation came from a book called Drive by Daniel Pink. I have a full list of references at the end, so you can get that name from the slides when I load them up to the Drupal GovCon site as well. But a little bit about me. So I am Lacy. I have a firm belief that everybody should own a tiara, and that could just be because, you know, when you go to Epcot without your kids, that's what you get your husband to do, or that just might be me. But this is a little mind map exercise. Mind mapping is a great way to just get a bunch of information down on paper, and it helps you see the associations between different things with the starting point as the nexus. So I'm Lacy. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm the program manager for the contract that we have at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. I am really passionate about Agile and passionate about team building, and I think a lot of that comes from my yoga practice. I'm also a certified yoga instructor, and I know a lot of times I walk into a room with a fun team building activity and I get groans, but this is okay because I'm used to being a little bit on the more out there side with my yoga practice. For music, I was full on into the grunge mode in high school. Loved Pearl Jam. Still believe Office Space is one of the best movies ever made. And I've got 3 amazing little kids. So, what motivates people? That's really the basis of the presentation today. So anyone who's leading a team, who's on a team, who participates in work of any kind, you're going to be interacting with other people. You have a goal. You're trying to accomplish something. So how do you get that best possible outcome from your work? Let's look at the different theories of motivation and kind of how that intersects with Agile development and the open source community in general. Anyone seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs before, right? Okay. So anyone who's taken a PMP probably has seen this. Anyone who's studied psychology has seen this. Still very relevant today. So the basic theory is that in order to get that place of self-actualization, that place where you feel satisfied with the work that you're doing, in yoga there's a word called samadhi, some people pronounce it, the place of bliss. You really love where you are. You need to have those building blocks in order to get there. So your physiological blocks, your food, shelter, water. You need to be safe. You have to have that feeling of safety physically, emotionally. You need to have love and belonging. You have those connections with other people, friendships, relationships. And then that self-esteem, you know that you are doing a good job. So all of those things lead up to that place where you are in a good spot in your life, in your work, in whatever it is. So this still is very relevant today, although this may look a little bit more like this at this point in time. So if we don't have the Wi-Fi and the battery life, we can't do a lot of things, unfortunately. But how does this intersect with motivation? Because we all want to get to self-actualization. We want our teams to get to self-actualization, but how do we build them up to get there? So in order to understand that, we're going to go back into the evolution of motivation. So the book Drive, and I have to be careful, not the book Drive as far as getting books, but the book titled Drive, looks at motivation in kind of version control. Motivation 1.0, Motivation 2.0, Motivation 3.0. Back in the day, people were motivated because they had no choice. If you didn't go out and hunt and gather and get firewood, your family wasn't going to eat and they weren't going to be warm. So there wasn't really a need for this extra motivational source. Enter manufacturing, enter those kind of monotonous jobs. People were sitting on an assembly line, they had to do the same thing over and over again. Not really interesting, not a whole lot that is going to, motivate them personally. So in comes Motivation 2.0, where we had a lot of rewards and punishments. But now the work has changed, right? And for many years, this is not a new idea. Many years, the type of motivation that we need to apply to our work has changed because it's no longer routine tasks. Think about your average day. Do you come in and do the same thing every day? It requires a lot of thought and generally a lot of creativity to get our work done, especially in this digital age. So I'm saying this is where you need to be if you aren't there already. I say if you aren't there already because these are not necessarily new concepts I'm going to go through, but they're probably concepts that you might not have known why they were there for a specific reason. And in reading the book, it kind of gave me a light bulb and said, oh, that's why we do things that way. And that's why it works so well. So let's go into Motivation 3.0 and what is it made up of? So in order to understand that, you need to understand the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So if you look at the boy on the left, he is extrinsically motivated. So this is motivation by something external. This is more your motivation 2.0 dynamic. It's your rewards and your punishments. He wants that trophy. He's going to get the soccer ball in because he wants that big shiny trophy to go show off to his friends. Whereas the boy on the right is intrinsically motivated. He is motivated just by the sheer joy of being able to do something for himself. He wants to get that ball in the hoop because he's going to be really happy that he did it. So let's look at extrinsic motivation a little bit more. So what are some examples of extrinsic motivators? You see a cop on the side of the road, you slow down, right? Because you don't want to get a ticket. That's probably pretty effective, but every time you don't see a cop, how many people actually stick to the speed limit, right? So you have this external motivator, but it's only really effective when that external force is present, or you have that fear of that external force being there. So this type of motivation is really good for routine work. If you have something that is just not going to be enjoyable, it's going to be a monotonous task, you can give an external reward to motivate somebody to drive stronger and to produce more. But just be aware that this kind of motivator for creative work or knowledge work does tend to decrease motivation. And there's been a bunch of studies that I'll go through and show you where we've seen that. So here's the opposite. Intrinsic motivation. This is really best for your creative and knowledge-based tasks. We are looking to kind of get to that personal drive of fulfillment. I did something good and I didn't need the money or I didn't need the extra vacation time. I'm just satisfied because I did a good job. There's lots of examples of this type of motivation. Montessori school is a really personal one for me because 2 of my children go there. And I see very different attitudes from them, from my first daughter. I do lots of psychological tests with my children, not purposely. But my first daughter did not go to Montessori school. My other 2 children do. And I can see the difference in how they really want to put their shoes away. They want to hang up their clothes. And it's because they have that choice at school. Montessori school, you could come in, you could choose whatever it is you want to work on. And it makes a big difference, for them at least. Another example you might have heard of is 20% time. So Google, for example, 20% of every employee's time can be used to work on whatever they want to work on, something that is personally motivating to them. All right. So here's some of the research. Let's take a look at extrinsic motivation and how that could decrease our motivation in a creative field. That's my son at Montessori school. He loves coloring, he loves drawing, he loves art of any kind. That was an artwork from my daughter. She didn't make the camera roll, but she did get her art featured up here. So there was a paper written called The Hidden Cost of Rewards. And Mark Lepper and David Green investigated 2 types of motivation. They were looking at the difference between now that rewards and if then rewards. So now that reward, you perform the task. Now that you've done it, I'm going to offer you a reward. But I didn't tell you I was going to offer you one before. Whereas if then rewards, I say, if you do this, I will give you money. But you haven't done anything yet. So you are expecting that reward at the beginning. This particular study, they went to a preschool. And they observed children for about 2 weeks. And they said, what do these kids like to do in their free play time? So the time when they had their choices, they found the children that were most motivated to draw or color, the ones that really enjoyed the creative time. Then they took those same children that they identified and they split them into 3 groups. The first group, they said, hey, if you color right now, I'm going to give you this great certificate with a gold star on it. Do you want to color? Second group, they sat them down and they said, do you guys want to color? And if they did, then they offered them the certificate. So that's their now that reward. And then finally, the third group, they just sat them down and said, hey, you guys want to color? Offered them no reward after the fact. So 2 weeks later, the researchers came back and they observed what happened. And what was interesting is that Groups 2 and 3, there was no significant change. During free play, they still enjoyed coloring. There was no decrease in the amount of time they did it. Group 1 did show a significant decrease in the desire to color. And this is 2 weeks after this experiment has happened. So that extrinsic motivator can have long-term effects on the motivation for creative work. This is just one example. This comes directly from the book Drive if you're looking for citations for that. Here's another example. The candle problem. Has anyone seen this one before? No? Okay. So the candle problem is a problem that's been used by psychologists for many, many years to examine very different aspects of what motivates people. Here's the problem. You walk into a room and you are presented with 3 items: a candle, a box of matches, and a box of tacks. And we would like you to affix the candle to the wall so that the wax doesn't drip on the table. So think about that for a second. How would you do that? There are a lot of people that try and take the candle, tack it to the wall, but the candle's too thick and the tacks are too short. Some people try and take the matches, light the wax, and then stick it to the wall, but that doesn't work because the candle's too heavy. So to solve this problem actually requires a little bit of creative thinking. And that's actually the solution. It's to take that box and use it as part of your solution. Take those tacks out and tack it to the wall. And it requires your brain to overcome some functional permanence, right? You're looking at the box of tacks just to hold the tacks. You're not looking at it as another piece of the puzzle. So this is a really interesting problem. It's a very creative problem to solve. So researchers in the 1930s, this was derived, but in the 1960s, they used this test to test human motivation. So they took 2 groups of participants this time. The first group, they said, you're going to walk into a room, I'm going to give you a problem to solve, and I just want to see how long it takes you to solve it, just setting a baseline. Second group, they said the same thing, I'm going to ask you to solve a problem, but if you are in the top 25% of people who finish, I'm going to give you $5. If you're the #1 performer, I'm going to give you $20. This was the 1960s, so think about it more like $60 if you're the #1 performer. It's if you adjust for inflation, right? So who here thinks that group 1 did better? All right, what about group 2? So here's the results. So group 2 actually took 3.5 minutes longer to complete this exercise than group 1. And so that's not just a couple of seconds. It was significantly longer. And if you think about it, you are now trying to achieve this reward. I want to get that $20, so I want to be best. But now your brain's thinking about the reward and you're not able to be creative and come up with the solutions. So it actually shuts down that creative thinking that we want in our day-to-day work. All right. So this is an interesting flowchart about when you should use what kind of rewards, whether it's intrinsic rewards or extrinsic. So the first thing it starts and says is the task mostly routine. If it's mostly routine, you can move up to the top and consider those external rewards. But before you give external rewards, can you see if you can make it a little bit more challenging or more interesting? And if you can't do that, then make sure you're upfront with people. I will give you a reward. This is going to be boring. Set it up for them right at the start so that they know they're going to get something out of it, but it's not going to necessarily be personally satisfying by doing this. If you look down at the bottom part, if the task is not mostly routine, then this big giant circle here in the middle, so this is all the things you want to do. And you don't have to read this word for word. Basically what it's saying is focus on creating that environment where they could get that intrinsic motivation, where they could find that personal satisfaction with the work that they're doing. So how can we do that? Motivation 3.0 is about stirring that intrinsic motivation in people. And in order to do that, people need to have a sense of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So autonomy, the ability to choose what people are working on, who they work with, how they complete a task. So even something that might be a little bit more routine, like stuffing envelopes and sending out a mailer. I used to do this in college. You'd have to fold things, you put them in the envelope, but I had my method for it. If a manager comes and says, I want you to take exactly 1 piece of paper, fold it in this way, put it in the envelope, use the sponge to moisten the tab, that's really gonna damper any creativity that I have. So trying to find the creative in the most routine task. Autonomy, that's allowing them to choose how they do it. Mastery. Can I get really good at something? Am I learning new technologies? Am I given the freedom to learn? And then purpose. So purpose is kind of twofold here. Do I understand why I'm completing something? So if I hand an intern a group of mailers to put together, do they know why they're doing it? Well, actually, this is the most important funding drive that we're doing for NIH right now. And if these mailers don't get out, we won't get the funding that we need in order to run the NIH Children's Inn. So putting that in perspective so people know why they're performing a task gives them a sense of doing something for the greater good. All right, so that's my daughter. She made this part of the slideshow. She's washing a table. I don't know if anyone has kids here, but she was voluntarily washing a table at school. She chose to do this. She is now very good at washing the table. She wants to wash the table, and she understands why it's important, because we have to clean the table up so that there's no germs and dirt. So it's just a smaller example of how Montessori kind of reinforces this. So let's look at a case study. This is ATLASSIAN. ATLASSIAN makes probably software that most of us are familiar with, Jira, Confluence, host of other tools. They decided to come up with this concept called FedEx Days, although if you look at their site, they call it Ship It Days, because I guess trademark. The idea here is that once a quarter, they allow their staff to have 24 hours to deliver something of value. The only constraints that they put on this is that this must be customer value. In 24 hours, you can work on whatever problem you'd like, whomever you would like, and in whatever way you'd like to come up with something that's going to be valuable to our customers. So through this method, they have gotten a lot of innovations delivered. So those are just a couple of the things. Like they've been able to make Jira have faster load times. They've come up with Confluence plugins. And Better Retros is a plugin to Jira that allows you to do retrospectives for Agile. Their staff love this. They look forward to this. They think about what they're going to do 4 times a year. And it's given great results for the company. It's given them lots of innovations. Now, this was done for many years. In 2008, Atlassian actually tried to give them even more, and they did switch the company over to 20% time so that people can now choose not just 1 day a week, but they can choose when that 20% of their time is spent on something new and interesting. All right, so what about open source? So the open source community is, and open source software in general, is software that people are not paid to manage. They're not paid to contribute to. But look at some of these really great examples of open source and how this intrinsic motivation has taken off. So Wikipedia, when it was first conceived, was competing with Microsoft Encyclopedia. Microsoft, obviously, big company, lots and lots of money behind this. They saw Wikipedia and said, oh, this is crazy. How can an open source tool possibly compete with us? Well, does anyone use Microsoft Encyclopedia now? Right. So Wikipedia has 27 million registered users. It's a huge community, and it's updated constantly. And it's also pretty competitive to get in there to be a reviewer for Wikipedia. So Linux, 75% of all cloud applications are now running on Linux. Apache, that's what we're running most of our Drupal stuff on, right? Drupal, 1.3 million community members. And then Firefox, although poor Firefox, it's probably not up there with Chrome anymore, but at one time, it had been downloaded over 1 billion times. And I know we still use it in a lot of ways. It's not the #1 browser anymore. But this just goes to show that open source, you are getting people the opportunity to contribute something in a way that they would like to contribute, and it might be outside of their jobs. Now, that's not to say that intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation can't work hand in hand. So by contributing to the Drupal community, you can contribute a module and then potentially, if you're a consulting company, get clients to come to you to help set up and install the module. So there could be a combination of those kinds of rewards there. So Google has done a lot of interesting research as well. They've got a project called the Rework Project regarding work. They did research on what makes the best team. So these are the 5 things that they found. They started with a theory that the and they found that that's not actually true. You could have, someone who's the best in their field and someone who's just okay, and they're going to have better results if they have these 5 things than a team of like top performers overall. So psychological safety is the #1 thing. Can we take risks on this team without feeling embarrassed? Can you ask questions openly without people shooting you down? There's a great podcast called Work Life with Adam Grant. It's on the last slide, so you don't have to remember it. But they talk about the psychological safety at The Daily Show. So if you've ever seen The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, Trevor is the big boss, right? They have to put together a show every day. And in order to do this, writers get in a room and they pass around ideas. So Adam Grant, who's also a psychologist, came to the Daily Show writers' room and observed them. And he noticed that, the writers, before Trevor Noah got there, were bouncing ideas back and forth. It was they were kind of building on one another's idea. So they had a lot of psychological safety as a group. Trevor walks in, same thing. Nothing changes. The flow of conversation didn't change. They didn't bow to his ideas. He was just another member of the group. So even though he was the leader, he really creates a lot of psychological safety by being humble and being part of the team and listening to everybody on the team and making them feel wanted. So dependability is another thing. We want to make sure that we can count on everyone. We know that everyone's going to pull their weight in some way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's doing the same amount of work. It just means that for whatever we're counting on a person to do the work for, we know that they're going to deliver. Structure and clarity. Do we know what the goals are, what people's roles are, and how we're going to execute this? And as leadership, as team members, we want to make sure that we involve everybody in those conversations so that it's not just from the top down telling people what the goal is, but getting their input as well. Meaning of work, this goes towards the purpose that we talked about with Motivation 3.0. Do we work on something that is, personally fulfilling? Do we believe in this? And then finally, the impact of work. I think those two are kind of similar. The meaning of work and the impact of work. Do we believe in it, and do we feel like it's going towards a higher purpose? All right. So all of these concepts tie in really nicely with Agile and Agile software development. So this is the Agile Manifesto. We believe in individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, responding to change. So these things are also very, very similar to what we're talking about is individuals and interactions, getting these people talking to each other, making sure everybody's on the same page, they know the goals, they know the role that they're playing. Making sure that we're collaborating with the customer. They're a member of our team, not just somebody who is telling us what to do. So having that sense of safety. Now, the customer is likely going to be instructing and helping set priorities, but the more you can bring them in and bring them into the conversation, the more you're going to have a high-functioning team. So the Agile Manifesto is one part of Agile software development. We also have the 12 principles of Agile, and I just pulled out 3 of them because they speak a lot towards this intrinsic motivation. So build projects around motivated individuals. So we want motivated individuals, we have to figure out how to motivate them. And we want to give them the trust and support that they need. So changing the conversation from traditional hierarchical management to, I am now your servant leader. I am going to help you get the job done. Best architectures, designs, requirements come from self-organizing teams. So we don't always have the luxury to decide who we're going to work with, but we may have the ability to work with our teams to say, I'm going to work with you on this set of functionality that we're going to build out. So you have to understand the reality. Working in the government, you don't always have the most choices, but where can you find those choices in your work to make you feel more satisfied? At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective. In my opinion, Agile retrospectives are one of the most important parts of the Agile process, and understanding what we did as a team, building the team up, and committing to making changes to make the team and the process better. So we looked at the evolution of motivation. Let's look at the evolution of management. So management in the very beginning, we were doing the wrong thing by treating people like cogs in a system. You work here, you must do what I say because I said so. Management 2.0, we were getting there. We were trying to do things with the best intentions, but it was still a very hierarchical structure. And in some ways, we still do have a lot of those hierarchies in place. But what we need to get to is the future of management, where management is not necessarily management. Management is holding that space for your team, giving them the things they need to be successful, and not necessarily dictating what they're doing. And then I pulled out this last bullet, the servant leader. This is a term that comes right from Agile. And the idea is you may be the leader, but you are a servant to the people on your team. You're going to manage not by telling them what to do, but by removing impediments that get in the way. So there still needs to be that overarching goal. People need to understand what they're working towards, but how they get there, giving them some of the latitude, if that's possible, will make them more motivated to deliver for you. So here's another interesting case study. This is ZAPPOS, great shoe company. They have a CEO named Shay. He is very big on culture. So the culture of ZAPPOS, these are their 10 different culture points. He really, as a leader, embraces them. I like number 3, create a fun and a little weirdness. So he loves all of these things. He lives them every day. He is humble. He is passionate. And that filters down to his employees and to his managers. So he makes sure that everybody knows what the culture of ZAPPOS is and how they fit into it. And he's gotten really great results through this. So this first statistic, they've relocated their call center back in 2005 from California to Nevada. This was a job that paid $13 an hour. But yet 80% of employees relocated for a $13 an hour job. In 2008, the average turnover of call centers was 150%. ZAPPOS had a 39% turnover. So really drastically different results from industry at large. And when they interviewed employees, they said that it was largely due to the fact that they loved working for ZAPPOS. They just loved the company. They loved the culture. All right, so what can you do? These are a couple of activities. This is for you as a person. What can you do to figure out what motivates you? We've done this with the team as well, if you want to kind of facilitate an activity around this. First thing is hand people an index card. Tell them on the one side, right, what keeps you up in the morning, or sorry, what keeps you up at night, and on the other side, what gets you up in the morning. This is really an exercise of understanding. Understanding, all 3 of these are exercises of understanding. What motivates you personally, and how can you shift your work in a way that's going to make you more satisfied with what you're doing? Second idea here is a flow test. So the theory of flow is when you're really in the moment, you feel personally motivated, you're into whatever it is that you're doing. And you're going to be in various states of flow throughout your day. So take your Fitbit, your Apple Watch, whatever you have, and set a few random timers throughout the day. And I say random, 3-4 timers throughout the day. And when that timer goes off, stop what you're doing, notice what you were doing, and notice if you felt like you were in flow. Were you fully engaged in what you were doing? As I was writing this slide, I stopped and I was like, I really like putting together presentations because I realized I was in flow. I was getting something together. I was putting together the message. So that might be for software developers. They're writing their code. They're figuring out an issue. They're going to realize they love that. Project managers, I love talking. I talk all the time. When I talk, I am in flow. When I am doing, I don't know, my financials or my monthly reports, not so much flow. So it's not that I don't do those things. It's just I'm acknowledging what makes me happiest as a person. And I may volunteer for more Drupal GovCons as a result because I know I really like this and this gives me satisfaction as an employee. The last thing is an exercise that we did as a group. There was 25 of us. And if you click on that link when you get these slides, it'll give you a PDF that you can download called Moving Motivators. And that PDF consists of these 10 different factors of motivation. We handed these cards out to the team and we asked them to just take them and put them in order of what's least motivating for you and what's most motivating. So curiosity, honor, acceptance, and each of them has a little description about what that means at the bottom. It was an interesting exercise for the team because so there were several people that put power way at the top. And we had a debrief on it, and we talked about it, and we realized power generally has a negative connotation. However, feeling powerful, feeling like people understand what you're doing, really motivates some people. Whereas the other half of our team had power way down at the bottom. There was another one, which other one was it? Acceptance was another one we had a lot of debate over. So acceptance, do you want to feel accepted? Do you care? Or do you just care that you have the power to get something done? Every person is going to be different, and I guarantee if you do this with your teams, you'll see a variety of different people with different orders. And that's important for team members to be able to work together well. It also gets them thinking and saying, okay, well, I know that I like to have freedom to do things in the way that I want to do them. Well, okay, let's talk about it as a group. What kind of freedom do you need, and what can we change within the confines of our work, our agency, our contract, whatever it is? All right. So what can you do as a leader? So management's not going away. You still have people that are kind of setting the space for the group. These are some techniques that we've used in our team. So making team decisions. You can't always have a group of everybody making decisions, but you can at least open it up to feedback. And if there's no consensus, then go back and make that decision. But getting people's input and opinions goes a long way towards getting their buy-in. Same thing with involving the whole team in goal setting. At the beginning of every contract, this is a photo from one of our offsites. We did a 4-hour offsite where we had everybody on the team go through and talk about what was in our contract, what our tasks were, how we had to manage it. And we did various exercises, whether that was talking out loud, writing on Post-it notes, writing on flip charts, to get a variety of people, all of their opinions out on the table, so that everybody knew the goals, they were involved in setting the goals. Rotating facilitators. At our Agile retrospective, every 2 weeks we have a new facilitator. They come up with new ideas. It keeps it interesting. If you go into your retrospective every 2 weeks or whatever your cadence is, and you do the same retro every time, you're going to notice you're going to get less results over time. So switching it up, even if it's the same retrospective but a different person is leading it, you're going to get more people to speak up, because the conversation, everyone wears that veil of how they see things. So it's going to switch that thinking. And then another tool that's been really successful with our team, at least, is something called a team health check. We decided on 6 questions and asked people to kind of rate their agreement with these questions. And they could be anything related to what you're doing. For us, it was, do you understand your role on the team? Do you understand the goals of the project? Do you feel respected by others on the team? So come up with your set of questions. We did this in 2 separate ways. We did it in this offsite where we had people walk around with a marker and put their rating on a flip chart. And then 6 months later, we asked the same questions, and we did it through SurveyMonkey, so it was truly anonymous, and we could compare the results. But having kind of a benchmark and being able to see where people are and how they're feeling is very helpful in understanding the team. Oh, and this other picture is just kind of for fun. This one down at the bottom, I went to the dollar store, I bought a whole crap load of random stuff and a bunch of blank certificates. So we put them on a table, we handed everyone a certificate, and they pulled the name out of a hat, and we asked people to be creative. Pick something on the table and give the person whose name you pulled an award that relates to this item. And we came up with some really great creative suggestions. I got a fish xylophone. That's awesome. It sits on my desk. And everybody on the team still has all of the things that they got on their desk. So it was a really fun activity. All right. So in my mind, the most important thing as a leader is setting the culture, promoting the culture. In yoga, it's called holding the space for the room. So basically, making sure people understand not what is expected, but how we act together as a group. And living that as a leader, regardless of whether you're truly hierarchical or not, if you have a title that says manager, people are going to look to you, and they're going to look to you to set that culture and act in a similar way that you function. And then get to know each other. My team hates when I do team building events, but I guarantee you, if you do one, at the end of it, everyone will be smiling. Currently, we have about 20 people on our team. The first team building event we did was karaoke. Yes, we did. We went to a karaoke room where private rooms for karaoke, and people were scared. They were like, I'll come, but I'm not going to sing. Every single one of those people got up there and sang. Every single one. It was wonderful. So luckily, I couldn't find the videos of that to put up here. But we've done karaoke, we've done escape room. This is one of our developers just had a new baby, so we celebrated with a baby shower and cake. So those sorts of things are really important, and getting to know each other on a personal level is extremely important to working together well. And then these are some of the things that I've referenced. They're all live links. I'll upload this to Drupal GovCon when I get home today, so you can get these. Drive's the book that most of the inspiration came from. Podcast, Work Life with Adam Grant, great podcast, gives lots of great ideas for you personally and also as managers. Booz Allen Agile Playbook, that's open source. You could download that for free. And then the last 3 bullets at the bottom, those are just great sites to get ideas for Agile retrospectives, different activities that you could do. And it doesn't need to be Agile if you're not working in an Agile environment. They're good team building activities that you can pull into your team at any time. So with that, that is all that I had. So are there any questions? All right, well, thank you. Oh, yeah, please.
Yes, do you feel, I'm not in project management, but I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, are there people that are sort of beyond help, or is it, or are you able to, like, find the motivations in everybody and, like,
sometimes it's not necessarily that a person's beyond help, but they may not be a good fit for the team. So you may have someone who's really talented, who's just not gelling with the team, who's not willing to participate, and that might mean that it's just not going to work. But you try these things, you try a variety of things, and I think that's really important, is the variety, because some people don't like talking, some people don't like going out after work hours. But if you try a variety and it's still not working, then it may be time to just, see if they can engage in different project work.
Are you going to post these online?
I am, yes, for sure. And these are all live links, so you could click on them when they're posted.
Yeah. So when you're the project leader, you had the slides earlier about what the main motivations are for certain people, like power and acceptance. Mm-hmm. How do you map those to particular roles on a project team so that everybody is ideally getting that motivation that they need in the exact job they're doing on the project?
Well, and I think that's interesting because it's not necessarily your responsibility as the leader to make sure that people are in the right roles. I've seen plenty of people who are in a role that they're clearly not there. That's not their number one thing. But bringing those sorts of activities and making them aware, because a lot of times people aren't even aware that they're not in the right role, and then providing them with coaching. Maybe they're really happy in the role, even though they're not performing as well as they should be. But it's about self-awareness and doing what you can to make them aware. If you show to them what their motivators are, they may be more willing to transition to a different role. Yes?
I'm intrigued by the concept of fun retrospectives.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of a particularly fun one that you have?
So Fun Retrospectives is actually the name of the site. Fun Retrospectives, Tasty Cupcakes, and Innovation Games are all sites where you could just go and they'll put together an entire retrospective for you. And generally it's a team building exercise, a retrospective on the work that you've done, and like a closing exercise of some sort. So team building exercises can be as easy and as quick as, give me one word to describe the last sprint. Retrospectives, they all come down to the same thing. You want to understand what went right, what went wrong, and how you could change things to make it better. But if you use different analogies, sometimes that gets you better results. So the one we use all the time is pluses, deltas, pluses and deltas, and shout-outs. So what went really well, what would we like to change, and who on the team are we going to shout out? We use that one a lot, but it does get old if we don't change it up. The last retrospective we did, one of the team members came up with a great idea of this car with a parachute. So if you picture a race car with a parachute behind it, the parachute is the things that are driving you down. The race car is the engine that's bringing you forward. It's going over a bridge. These are the innovations that are going to get us across via this below. So those were 4 different categories, and people put post-its to what related to those. So just changing the kind of the analogy that you're using can help get you more creative results. Does that answer your question? Cool. Alice, don't heckle me. All right. All right, well, thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, I'll stick around for a little while, and I'll post these so you can email me as well.